Welcome to another video. This time I thought I'd make a video explaining how my STEAM projects work. I've given my projects away to many people and I don't have the best instructions, so this might give a better oversight into how the projects actually operate. The projects are built using ESU decoders. I'm using a V5 decoder in this case. Today I'll be utilising my 12 class, which I'm in the process of building. It's running a Locksound V5L decoder in the tender, a tang band speaker in the boiler, and another sugar cube type speaker in the tender as well, just to balance the tang band out. I've got my ESU Mobile Control 2 standing up beside it so you can see the inputs being made and the throttle positions. So hopefully that helps give a better oversight as to what's actually going on. The STEAM projects that I've built operate slightly different to the normal way of driving locomotives. I have also got a method of switching to a more traditional drive, and that is function selectable. To switch between the two drive types, either the regulator type drive, which is a little bit more prototypical, or the traditional type drive, which follows the throttle, you switch a function. This time I've allocated it to F14. Obviously you can map it to any function button you like, but if I hold F14 down for a prolonged time, so it's still on, and then I turn F14 off,
traditional drive,
that has now put the locomotive in a more traditional drive. If I do that again, hold F14 down, give it some time, release,
regulator drive,
it cycles between the two drive types. So you do this before you turn the sound on, and it completely changes the way the locomotive will drive. This function that alters the drive type also has a secondary function, and that secondary function is to alter the way the brake behaves. So this project has two types of brake. So one brake is that you actually use an individual function button to brake the locomotive, and the other method is to, when you're at speed step 0, it will apply the brake. This is particularly important in regulator type drive, the more prototypical drive, as you'll see later on. But to show you, if you cycle F14 quickly instead of with a long delay,
function button brake,
that switches over to utilising a function button to brake. Cycle it again quickly,
speed step 0 brake,
and now we're on speed step 0 brake. Now that we've got past all the drive type and brake type changes you can make via function buttons, I'll get the sound going. This project goes through quite a long air pump compressor startup sequence. I recorded this off 3016 and found it interesting that on starting they would slowly introduce steam to the compressor. You can hear the compressor cycle quite slow at this point, and a lot of mechanical sort of clunking noises. It slowly increases with a little bit more steam. There we have the compressor running at full steam now, pumping up the air system of the locomotive. The compressor startup sequence can be cancelled automatically as soon as you start driving the locomotive. The compressor startup sequence is bypassed and you go straight into the more normal compressor cycle. Okay, onto the whistle. Now the whistles are pretty normally quite straightforward. This whistle only uses one function button. They don't have a short whistle or long whistle or anything like that. It's slightly playable, so I'll take you through that. A quick pull of the whistle cord will result in a really fast whistle. You can do that multiple times, and there's slight variations in the short whistle. It's quite playable. As you can see on the Mobile Control 2, you can see the function just flashed up. If you hold the function on, you obviously get a long whistle. So the playable part of this whistle comes in that you hold the whistle on, then you quickly turn the function button off for the whistle, then reapply, and the whistle will dip. So just keep an eye on the mobile control too. So there you have a fairly playable whistle. This could be, I've only utilised this because I've got so many whistle recordings, all from a single point source. So there's many things you can do with the whistle. You can get different startup sequences as well, but that was just a quick demonstration of how this particular project's whistle is operating. Okay, cylinder cocks. So the cylinder cocks on this particular project are in manual at this point in time. This is selectable using a sound CV change, which is quite simple. You can have them automatic if you change the sound CV. But with the manual cylinder cocks, it gives you a little bit more realistic operation. So without the cylinder cocks, if I start the locomotive, you'll see the wheels just start turning. So no cylinder cocks there. I'll just back the speed off. So I'll introduce cylinder cocks now. So F4 has been selected. So now, if I crack the throttle to speed step 1, as if I've just cracked the regulator, the cylinder cocks will play, yet the locomotive won't move. You also hear the compressor as the brakes are released. So that will just sit there on cylinder cocks at the moment. If I give it another speed step. So we've got the cylinder cock pumping. If I go a little bit faster, so on speed step 3. And then I turn the cylinder cocks off, F4 off. And you'll see the cylinder cocks are now shut, the regulator's still open, but the locomotive actually increased a tiny little bit of speed. With the cylinder cocks open, you've lost a little bit of power obviously because you've got so much steam escaping. So that's a demonstration of the manual cylinder cocks. It gives you a little bit more realistic operation, and that way you don't have the cylinder cocks playing every single time you want to make a move, especially during shunting. Okay, we'll get into driving the locomotive. It's in regulator mode at the moment and speed step 0 brake. So the idea of the regulator type drive is that you increase the speed of the locomotive with the throttle just as per normal. But when you start backing the speed off with the throttle, like decreasing speed steps, the locomotive speed will remain set where you left it. What does happen is that the sound will change, as if you were slowly shutting the regulator on a steam locomotive, less steam's going into the cylinders, which then softens the chuff all the way eventually to coasting. So we'll get it moving. You can follow along on the mobile control too. So we're currently on speed step 14. So we can see it's chuffing along, happy as Larry. As I said, if you begin to shut the regulator off now, i.e. the throttle, you'll see just with one speed step decrease, the chuff has softened, but it's still there. We'll go down a little bit further, take a few more speed steps out. And the chuff gets even softer and shorter. So we've got a really light chuff there, but we're maintaining that same speed as what we were at speed step 14. Keep shutting the throttle down. Barely a chuff there. We keep going all the way. So we're at speed step 3 now, and the locomotive's coasting. but we're still maintaining the track speed of what we set when we were at speed step 14. As I said, this is with speed step 0 brake at the moment, so if we hit speed step 0, you'll hear the brake come on and the locomotive will start slowing. Using this regulated drive gives you great ability to drive the locomotive at track speed but vary the sound of the chuff. I'll do it again. We'll go up to speed step 14. So once again, we'll start shutting the throttle. We're down at speed step 6 now, so still at speed step 14 track speed, but we've now varied the sound of the locomotive by shutting the regulator, just like the real thing. If I bring the regulator back up now, where we left at 14, we can increase speed. We'll reduce the throttle again, shut the regulator. All the way down. So we're coasting now. Drifting down a hill if you like. So this time with speed step 0 brake, this is what the beauty of having this locomotive being held at track speed at the moment. So we can take a little bit of speed out of this locomotive now by making a brake application. So if we go to speed step 0, and then we go back to speed step 1, we release the brakes, but now the locomotive's new speed is set. So we can take another little bit of speed out of it. 0, brakes applied, go back to 1. And the safety valve gets in the way all the time. So with the brakes released, we've now got new track speed. We can keep doing this. You can actually modulate the brakes all the way to bring you into a platform or something. So we'll go to speed step 0 again, brake application, speed step 1, that's the new speed. We can bring the throttle back up again. Get a nice soft chuff there. We bring the throttle up. So we open the regulator again. And we can increase speed. We'll close the regulator again, we're happy there. And we're drifting again. So you can really modulate the sound just by using the throttle, and it's separating the track speed and the sound of the actual locomotive. Okay, we'll apply the brake. Speed step 0. You may not notice this, but the coal shoveling, the injector and the safety valve are all fairly smart and related to each other. So the project's working out how many times the coal has been shoveled in, how many times the injector gets used, at what regulator position it is, and when it's shut off, and that dictates when the safety valve will actually blow if it's going to. Just like the real thing, if you shovel heaps of coal in there with hardly any water, the safety valve will most likely blow. If you keep the boiler filled with water, well then you sort of limit the usage of the safety valve blowing there. It's rather than just being complete random sounds, I find this was a nice little challenge to build, and it actually means something now. The sounds relate to each other properly. Okay, I just want to go through the drive again, but using the function button brake. So we'll change it. So F14 quickly cycled.
Function button brake.
We'll turn the sound on. We'll use cylinder cocks this time. Cylinder cocks are closed. So we'll go up to speed step 14 again. I'll shut the throttle this time, and you'll notice that when we get to speed step 0, we won't actually stop. It's coasting, but won't stop. There is a time delay, so eventually this will stop, but just going to 0 won't be braking the locomotive when you want to. So we'll open it back up again. If we use the brake now, make a brake application without closing the regulator, something that you wouldn't particularly do at this kind of speed, you'll notice that the locomotive will slow and start labouring. So we've got the brakes running there, but the locomotive won't stop. We'll release the brakes. So obviously you can only do this when you have a function button brake. So this time we'll apply the brakes, but we'll close the regulator. So I'll apply the brakes. Function 1. The brake function, both speed step 0 braking and the function braking, have the ability to make further reductions. It gives you 3 levels of braking. So if you apply the brake, either with the function button or going to speed step 0, if you then quickly release it and then reapply, it gives you another level of braking. If you do it again, you get the 3rd level of braking, which can pull you up quicker. This gives you a little bit of flexibility in trying to time a stop with a platform or something like that. It just makes it a little bit more realistic, like in a real brake stand, taking a further reduction, applying more pressure onto all the brake shoes. So I'll demonstrate. We'll go up to speed step 20 this time. So we close the regulator, the throttle. The locomotive's left running at speed step 20. We'll make a brake application. We'll release and reapply. Before the safety valve kicked in, hopefully you could see that the 3 levels of brake were significantly different. I got the 3rd one in there just at the end, although the 2nd one was slowing down pretty quickly, but you could see just how quickly the wheels would pull up. Now this regulator control basically came out of the fact that I don't like using function buttons for drive holds and those type of things. I think it's very unrealistic. This is all just done by the throttle. Basically you just cylinder cocks, the whistle and the throttle and the brake. Pretty much the controls mostly used in the steam locomotive, and you can drive your locomotive. Yes, I've had a few accidents. I've run through off the ends of tracks and things like that. It just means you have to drive the locomotive. So it's up to you and what sort of style you like to do, but I quite enjoy driving the locomotive. It's fine just to sit there and watch them go round and round or stop and go, but it's one aspect that I really enjoy. So after talking about not liking function buttons to control locomotive driving aspects, I do have one, and this function button doesn't lock the locomotive into speed or anything like it, but it will lock it into either coasting or heavy chuff. It's the one button and it does both. So if you're coasting and you push this button, when you increase the throttle, it will remain coasting. However, the locomotive speed will increase. This is good for simulating either cresting a hill and drifting down a gradient, and then you can make brake applications to slow it up, or you can simulate heavy chuff, and then as you back the throttle down, the speed decreases as if you're starting to tackle a grade. I'll demonstrate. We'll just bring it up to speed step 6, and then we'll shut the regulator and we'll get it into a bit of a coast. So I'll shut the regulator down to speed step 1. We're still chugging along at speed step 6, but we're now coasting. The regulator is basically shut. If I hit F3, it basically locks it into coasting now. So if I increase the throttle, you'll see we're not chuffing, but we're slowly increasing speed, coasting. So with function button braking, it gives you a little bit more flexibility. So we could potentially be drifting down a hill, and I can apply the brake. Slow it down a bit. I can release the brake. And slowly speed up again. Can apply the brakes again. Release the brakes. And I reapply them. We'll stop it there. You get the picture. Okay, we'll demonstrate the heavy chuff hold now. So we'll get the locomotive chugging away. So I'll hit F3 to hold it into the heavy chuff type area. Now if I decrease the throttle, we are locked into the heavy chuffs down. So we're about to just tackling a grade. Just gives you a little bit more flexibility in if you want to simulate grades and inclines like that if your layout's flat. I think that demonstrates that. Another little gimmick on this project is that you cannot turn the headlight on, and forgive me, I haven't put the headlight on this locomotive yet, but you can't turn the headlight function on without having the generator first going. This sounds pretty obvious because you need electricity. The generator's on its own function and the headlight's on its own function. The sound aspect of this though is when you turn the headlight on, the generator sound will load up under load. So I'll demonstrate that now. So generator on. So the generator's spooled up. I'll just wait for the injector to finish. So if I hit F0 now, which is the function for my headlight, you'll hear the generator just load up. If I turn the headlight off, F0 off, the generator sound unloads. So there are other sounds like blowers, water fillers, coal shoveling, all those things that are selected by a function button as well. But I won't go into those are pretty rudimentary things. I just want to give you a little comparison now between just a traditional type drive. So I'll give F14, push that, give it some time, release it.
Traditional drive.
So we're now in traditional drive. I'll start the sound again. So this time, we'll just increase the throttle. Slower speed step 14, like we were before. And this time, if we close the throttle, we still get drifting and all that sort of thing. But as you see, the locomotive speed matches the throttle position. Very much a traditional type thing. Sure, it's still got drive hold on this, like in the more traditional drive flow, so you can still use drive hold and all those type of things that you're used to. But you just don't have the opportunity to utilise the brakes and getting that flow and changing the dynamic of the sound in this sort of drive template. So you can apply the brakes, but if you release the brakes, it's always going to end up being at whatever position you set the throttle at. I just find the regulator type, more prototypical drive flow is just gives you so many more opportunities. Like I said, braking, just being able to manipulate the sound as per the regulator, as per the real thing, taking a little bit of speed out of the locomotive when it's going too fast, and then releasing the brakes and then having it run at that new speed, allowing you to have 3 different brake settings even. It's I just find it takes a little bit of getting used to, and it's not everybody's cup of tea because it takes actual concentration. And but for me, part of the whole hobby is trying to make it as realistic as possible. Go into a lot of effort making the locomotives realistic and the track work realistic and all that type of thing. So I think driving the locomotive as close as we can at this point in time to a real thing is quite a positive step forward as well. So I'll leave it there at the moment. Thank you very much for bearing with me. Thank you. Bye.